Alright, so I took the old Sharpie and I marked here, here, and here on the terminals and on the side of the box, so I know which way to plug things back in later, because that's what I do. And I flipped the cover open, this thing right here, which let this thing drop down to always see the 3 old disgusting batteries. And up in there are the boards that are going to be taken out. Alright, so I used a screwdriver and a hex head to remove the box, and that's where it was. And this is what it looks like on the back side. So somebody has taped a piece of blue plastic on there and some kind of a clear plastic on there. And I think some other color under there to give it a different color yet again. So someone has obviously done some things to it, and there's some black electrical tape on here as well. There it is. So now it's time to continue reading the directions. Alright. I'm reading the instructions, and I read them twice because that's what it said to do. So first thing I did was I pulled that nasty batteries out, and I'm now removing the wires. So wires removed. I'm going to save these little guys because you just never know when you might need a replacement one of these for something else. Anyway, so that's out of the way. I went and I pulled off this board, which was sitting in here, unplugged it all, and so the battery's gone. Now on this part, basically you flip it upside down, and there were these 6 little nuts that I used a 1/4-inch nut driver to remove from here, 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 and here, and here, and here. And then basically I could just push this sucker out. And there you go. I have now removed the MCU from the box. That's really all we want with the box. It said if it's nasty like this, then you got to repaint it, because the paint, I guess, is some kind of coating that'll mess with the board, so we don't want any flaking paint. So it's time to clean this thing up and give it a good paint. It also says that we want to save these metal standoffs, these pieces right here. I'm not going to throw those away. And just because these boards have got so many different components that might be good for something else in the world of Seeburg, I'm just going to chunk these into a box somewhere for later. Alright, so I removed the wire harness and the boards. I put all the standoffs over here in this blue lid so I could easily see them and not lose anything. So these are all the pieces and parts and the gel that I took off of it. And I'm still on step 3. But I follow the directions because he says follow my directions. And he created the board, he wrote the directions, I should follow them. So the next thing I want to do is I want to remove this battery holder that had 2 rivets. So I just drilled out one. I'm going to drill out the next one, and it should come right off, and then I'll have a totally empty box that has rust and decay on it, and per his directions you got to clean it and paint it. So got some sanding blocks, and I'm going to do that next. Alright, so if he writes multiple times that you need to clean the box and paint it and get all the disgusting flaking paint and battery acid and rust out of it, there's a reason for that, because it could damage the new board. So I actually heeded his advice. I went out in the middle of the night in the dark and shot this with some Rust-Oleum. No one's ever going to see this box. No one cares what it looks like. You won't see it. So it's probably the worst paint job I've ever done in my life, but it is now painted. Threw some tape on top of it, so painter's tape, so you can still see the name, and it's now ready to go. Alright, so wrote my parts. So I took the little standoff piece, there's 6 of them, and I put them back in with the nuts, and I made them nice and loose. See how they kind of wiggle? So they're in there, but it allows, they got play in them. I'm going to go ahead and put this board on there and wiggle it into place because it has those holes, and I'm going to put these nuts that came with the package on top. Okay, so per the instructions, I finger tightened things so that they were loose, and those 4 are simple to get in. These 2 that are down in here, I ended up laying it down flat and then just gently putting in a nut driver to get those nuts in. And then I was able, since it was loose, I was able to just move the board around, kind of wiggling it until I could see that these buttons, which these are buttons, were in the center, so that they're center aligned. Then I just tightened up these 6 and the other 6 on the outside. Okay, so I have the board inside of the MCU housing, and one of the directions says to make sure that you have the right nuts that are fitting it, the hex head screws. And so there's 4 of them. 1, 2, look, it's blue. I colored that one red, and purple and green. And I also put those colors up here on the sides where it goes. Up under here, blue and red and purple and green. So the idea is then once I have them up there, because those 4 screws only fit in those 4 holes, I'll know which one actually goes into which one, because I'm sitting here, I'm holding something upside down, not being able to see what I'm doing. Very awkward position, putting in screws that are going to be a pain to get in. So I want to make sure I had the right ones in the right color. I also know anybody that works on a jukebox, there's small things that has small pieces and parts that fall. They fall down inside and then you can't get to it. So I just kind of positioned a sheet underneath it, so as I do drop them, which I'm sure I will, hopefully it'll fall down on my catch base and not be lost forever. Okay, I installed the new Gen 2 and turned it on, and so it has an error code 00. So I take a look at the manual, and error code 0-something is codes 00 to 09. It's a stuck keypad, key 0 to 9. So it doesn't seem to change it, and there's nothing stuck there. See if that works. Changing it to service mode. Doesn't seem to do much. Alright, time to take it apart and see what's what. Just a quick video before I start taking things apart. So I'm going to take off those 4 nuts back there that hold on the MCU. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Well, it's worthwhile to note that I've taken this out because the first time I tried to put this box back in that while it was in the jukebox, and that means that the lid is up, and because the springs are bad, I had to put a 2x4 in to hold the lid up so it won't hurt me, and then trying to hold things up in there and get it just right and put this in, it didn't come out well, let's put it that way. And now I want to be able to actually do it easily, so I'm going to put it, so I forced 4 hex head nuts, took this piece off, and again, it's just the piece that holds the title strips. So yeah, so you can see that there's the keyboard, there's where it's going to have the readout, and I didn't want the buttons to touch the cardboard. So I just put some, well, in this case I put some coasters, I guess, because that's what I found, to keep the buttons from being compressed. So the buttons are no longer compressed, and they're all sitting there nice and easy, so it'll go right down. One more little hint here. So if I listen, you hear the sound? So when I put it in there, I should be able then to push and hear those sounds. So I put the 4 screws in, and they were a pain in the butt. And now I'm going to push the buttons. So far, the 6, 7, and 8 work. The 5 works. 4 works. Sometimes. The others do not. This tells me that the springs are pushing and holding the buttons in. So it's not clicking them because they're already in pushed, which is a problem, and I'm glad this is why I've got this thing out, because trying to do this upside down, reaching in with the 2x4 in your way is just not a fun thing. So let's try this again. Now, there isn't really any wiggle room to move the box farther away from the spring push buttons. I mean, these are all just screwed straight in, and the box fits right into the hole. So the only thing I can do is look at those push buttons and see if there's some way I can make them shorter. We'll take this out and take a look. So just listen with me. Okay, I'm going to push the box down, and that will be pushing the buttons against the computer pad. Ready? Set. Here it goes. So we want it to be sitting up far enough away so when they push the button, it clicks and releases. Problem is we've got a problem. All right, so doctors take a Hippocratic oath to do no harm. And I try and take that same oath on a Seeburg Jukebox. So I don't want to break anything in my zeal to do something. So these are up too far, so that they are pushing onto these and holding them in when I put the box in. They're doing that instead of they just hold in, which is not a good thing. So we can't adjust the box away from here because the screw holes don't have any play. They're very, very tight fit. So what do we do? Well, I guess there's a couple of thoughts here. One is I've got these little rubber pads. I don't know if you can see them or not, if I can even turn it very well. If I remove that white piece, which according to my instructions, there's a number of different things. Others will have a plastic plug, and others will have nothing. See, look. Others will have a plastic plug and others will have nothing. If the screw is used, they must be removed. If the plug is used and has not cocked, it may be left in place. So that leads me to believe that I could, as I'm contemplating here, and by the way, my glass is getting lower out of frustration. I could pop off these if I don't bend the spring, and that may give me the distance that I need. The other thing is, you see these 4 screws here? I am guessing that those hold it in place. So I could potentially unscrew those and put a washer on the outside, which would then make that sit down a little farther away, and I wouldn't have to remove the plugs. So that's, I'm going to look at both options before I, again, Seeburg Hippocratic Oath, don't break the crap out of it trying to make something work. So, close-up of the plastic plugs. Okay, I removed the 4 screws. Everything here is a 1/4 inch nut driver, so it's always good to have a couple of those around. And now I'm going to lift this puppy up, and there it is. So let's just take a look at what we got. To me, the easiest thing at this point is if I just added 4 rubber washers to make this thing sit out, I wouldn't have to mess with any of these springs. And since this is going to be in my house and not in a bar somewhere with beer spilled all over it, I think that might be my current plan to get this one done and fixed. Let me ponder while I go get a second glass of wine, because this one just isn't doing it for this frustration level. This is pretty cool. So these things actually, I mean, you could literally take the spring out and you can lift the whole number out, and you can see that or not. But they are 2 little white plugs. So that's about what you get. I don't know if I want to try and pull those out, because by doing that I might bend the spring out, and I really don't want to screw anything up. I'm tired of breaking things in life. So what I'm going to do instead is, I've got some grommets, they call these things, I don't know, cheap box of grommets that I got from Harbor Freight or somewhere. Anyway, but they're really thick. I use them actually for, these things come in really handy for a lot of things that go bad, by the way. I use them on my gem a lot, as it has a lot of grommets that have worn out on latch solenoids. Anyway, this is way too thick compared to that. So I'm going to cut it in half, basically. Slice it off so I just get the one side of the donut. And any of you guys have a knife? This is an Olaf, and I absolutely love them. If you ever have a reason to get a knife, get an Olaf, because you can just literally take it out as far as you want. So I'm going to take this puppy out here, and you buy 50 replacement blades for 10 bucks, and these things are razor sharp. Alright, so I'm going to slice a few of these in half and see where I go. Alright, 30 seconds later, got them all cut. I'm going to go ahead and just set them on there, gently put it on there, screw it back in, and play a little more. I'm on my next glass of wine. So should not drive or operate any power tools. Okay, a little creative carving and a little bit of tape just to hold these 4 in here long enough to get this thing together. Okay, I used a couple of rolled up kitchen towels to be standoffs so I could reach under there and put the button assembly back in while I screwed it in from the top. So it's in, and you can see now that they're sitting down much lower than they were before. Not much lower, but enough lower. So the question is how's it going to work? Let's find out. Alright, the glass is empty. Those screws are in again. This is why I have it here and not in the jukebox. These screws are just a pain in the butt to get in there. I don't know how to say it. I'm glad I color coded them every time. Anyway, so now as you can see, it's still sitting up. So let's listen. Hear that? That's a beautiful sound to me. If I'm pushing the buttons, I can hear them click. So it's actually working. Woohoo! Yeah, buddy. Yeah, success. So listen. Music to my ears. Let's get this puppy back into the disco.